Okay, cool. I think we can get started with our OpenFGA community meeting for September 2024. As always, I'll start with the agenda. We'll go through a few minutes of introductions for those that feel like they want to introduce themselves. And then we'll go straight to what just shipped, because that's always one of the more nicest things to see, all the new stuff in OpenFGA. We have a few exciting demos today, and we'll have a look at what we're currently working on and what's coming up in the future. And lastly, a bit of community news and some of the survey results, because we ran a community survey recently, and we now have results which are really, really interesting. So stick around for those as well. And at the end, if we have some time left, there's always the opportunity to do a Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or put them in the chat. But as we're all friends in this call, if you have any questions during these presentations or during the demos, feel free to ask them immediately. You don't have to wait until the end. So, hey everybody, this is the OpenFGA team. The slide keeps on getting more people on them. The team keeps on getting bigger. It's nice to see so many people dedicating time to OpenFGA. So thank you, everybody. And let's start with some introductions. If you feel like introducing yourself, if this is your first time, or maybe it's not your first time, but you still want to introduce yourself, we'd like to know who you are, where you're from, who you work for, and why you're interested in OpenFGA. And as always, I'll set the example. So hey, everybody, my name is Sam Bellen. I'm from Belgium. I work for Okta, Auth0 by Okta, as a developer advocate. And I'm interested in OpenFGA because it's a really exciting way to do authorization. It's super flexible and it solves a lot of issues. And where am I in my OpenFGA journey? Learning, as always. I keep on learning more about OpenFGA, learning more about Rebag and Zanzibar. And it's always a really refreshing thing to learn about. So yeah, really exciting. Is there anybody else that wants to introduce themselves?
Yeah,
I'll go ahead.
Myself. Oh, I'll go for it.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Just quickly, I am Jose Carlos Chavez. I work at Okta in platform security. But I am also have passion for fine-grained access. Before I was working on a project called NGAC, which is Next Generation Access Control. And now I am trying to bootstrap something in FGA. Yeah, thanks.
I think we had somebody else that wanted to go. Yep, go.
Yes, hi, I'm Daniel Yim. I'm newly joined to Okta on Andres's team. I'm a product manager on FGA. My background is software engineering, and now I'm in product management role. I come with experience from previous place on leading their identity team as well as their developer experience team. So yeah, very excited to join and be part of all the FGA activity. Thanks.
Hey, welcome. I see some hands raised as well. Dan?
Yeah, so I'm Dan Check. I'm a distinguished engineer over here at Grafana. I've been here for a little over 8 years. So we're in the midst of a large project to bring Grafana onto a Kubernetes-based platform. And as part of that, we are looking at using OpenFGA as the Auth0 store for Grafana and Grafana Cloud moving forward, which is really exciting. So most recently, I've been working on implementing SQLite support inside of OpenFGA since we support MySQL, Postgres, and SQLite for Grafana. It's been very interesting, but still very early in the OpenFGA journey personally, and we're really excited about the future of OpenFGA and about working together.
Really nice. Then I hope I'm not butchering your name, but Zilvinas?
That's me. Hi. Yes, my name is Zilvinas, or people call me Z. If it's easier, I'm from Lithuania. So originally now I'm in San Diego, California. And just last week I joined Okta in the FGA core team. So hopefully we'll be seeing you more often here. my previous background, I worked at Intuit and identity authentication team, so kind of a little familiar with the problems that are being solved here. So glad to join.
Welcome. Nice to have you. I don't see any raised hands, so if you still feel like introducing yourself, now is the time. If not, we'll get to the more exciting part, the demos and all the things we're going to talk about. One more raised hand. Ala.
Okay, my name is Ala. Living in Germany, work as a senior software engineer for Join.com. We shipped OpenFGA on production beginning of this month. And yeah, I'm here because we are excited about it.
Nice to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Cool. So I've promised demos, but before we get to the demos, let's talk about what we just shipped. OpenFGA version 1.6 has shipped, and with that, we have query consistency options as non-experimental. It was available as an experimental feature, but now it's available at GA. We have new performance improvements. We're always looking at the performance improvements, and it's always amazing to see those land in a new version of OpenFGA. Some bug fixes, and the security advisory published a version 1.5.7 and 8.8. So if you're still on an older version of OpenFGA, please upgrade to the latest. We've added OpenTelemetry metric support in Java, the Go SDK and the .NET SDK. So that gives you a bit more insight on what's going on. And later today, we're also shipping the SQLite adapter. So thanks to Dan and Grafana. And I can thank you here in person because you're in this call. So thank you very much, Dan. First demo, OpenFGA and Envoy. Jose, do you want to share your screen?
Yes, please.
Let me find this stop share button. There you go.
Okay. So I will keep this simple. Basically, Envoy is a proxy. Well, let me go for it. Yeah, OpenFGA meets Envoy, and consequently, Istio. Jose Carlos Chavez worked at Okta as a security software engineer, open source lover. So what we have here is crossing paths. OpenFGA is, well, you know what it is, right? A fine-grained access control platform. And the idea is that we can take this fine-grained access control not only to user or user to resource communication or user to service or whatever, but also look beyond that and think of service to service communication or machine to machine communication, right? So what I'm working on is an integration on OpenFGA on Envoy, which is a proxy gateway or a sidecar. You can use Envoy in different environments. So we have crossing paths here. We have Istio, which is a service mesh. Basically, it is an abstraction of the network, which run Envoy as sidecars for workloads like services, for example, gateways, ingress, or whatever. And then they have Envoy working as policy enforcer. So in front of every workload that you deploy in an Istio, you most likely have an Envoy acting as a reverse proxy. Envoy is a proxy or gateway that allows to add filters that calls external services by gRPC or HTTP, right? So then when the request comes, we will see in the next slide, you can call an external service to determine whether this request can continue or not. You send it to upstream or just block it. OpenFGA is authorization solution that builds granular access control, right? And then Aspire, it's a project for identity attestation on workloads, right? Basically, when we have to resolve an access control check, we have a subject, we have an object, right? The subject is easy to get, right? You usually have an API key, you have a JOT, you have a cookie in the session. But the other part, the internal part, is not necessarily easy from the gateway standpoint. So Aspire attempts to resolve all these kind of things by giving identity to workloads, right? Don't want to go deeper into this. How does this work? Well, in the upper graph, you will see that whenever there is an HTTP or gRPC call, from the client, it goes to Envoy. Then Envoy will call a gRPC authorization service, right? Saying, hey, this is the request. Headers, path, query parameters. Can this proceed or not? And then the authorization service will, for example, in this case, will contact FGA and ask for the check. And then with that response, Envoy will send this to the service or return back to the client saying 403, for example. In the deployment, we want every Envoy to, whenever there is, when we are in a service-to-service scenario, what we want is that when two services talk to each other, they have a common, or first they present each other with their own identity and then say, this is my certificate, this is me, right? And then we have a centralized authority that will issue the certificates, and then you can trust each other, right? And that's why Spire does the work for this image or identity attestation. So with these two words, what we are looking here is that we can either say, can this user access to this service because I have the identity from the client based on a JOT or based on a cookie session or based on a PK or whatever. And then in the other hand, we have an identity that I can add to the model through an SPIFFE identity, for example, that says this service is mydomain.com/service A or service B, right? In a way that is trustable. This all in the context of zero trust, right? Where you have to roll out policies as if the attacker was internally. So you cannot anymore trust workload traffic because it could be a man-in-the-middle attack, or it could be that an image is compromised, or imagine that you have the case where a service in tier 1, or a service that is not supposed to be tier 1, is tier 2, let's say, is trying to connect a service in tier 1. That's something suspicious. But as of now, you don't have a way to resolve these decisions. But now, since every workload will have an identity, you will. So let me quickly show a demo. Basically, what I did here is I am running an Envoy. Here's the configuration. Basically, this Envoy will act as a reverse proxy.
We are not seeing your screen.
Oh, sorry.
Just the slides.
Let me share the other screen. Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, we will deploy an Envoy service. This Envoy service will have certain configuration about an external authorization, which is a service that we create specifically for Envoy. You can check the project OpenFGA Envoy. And this service is going to receive a request with a JOT. It will, of course, validate that the JOT is well signed, that the signature is valid, and it will extract the payload, and then it will send to the downstream service so that the downstream service know who is calling this. And then through the Spire agent, it will also know, okay, where is this request going? And then we can do the check. This external authorization service, it has a very simple configuration. Basically, you tell them where is the OpenFGA server, what is the store ID, the mode, whether it is enabled or not, and then the instruction sets. Basically, here we are aiming to extract information from the request about the user or the subject, extract information from the request about the destination or the resource, and also what is the relationship that you're looking at. In here we are, where is this? Here. In here we are looking at we are extracting information from a JOT. Basically, Envoy will send the JOT payload in this header. We will look into that, and we will resolve that as the subject. We will look at the SPIFFE identity of the object, like what service am I querying, and then the relationship will be the request method, right? The model will look like something like that. We have a user, we have a SPIFFE, then we can define the access. Can a user access to this SPIFFE identity, which will represent a workload? And there's certain conditions, right? We can say like, okay, this user can access this object which is the API, for example, with the allowed methods get, right? And then we see the test that with get, it will work, with delete, it won't work, because we are only allowing get. This is a very simple model, but we could have like different kind of models. For example, in gRPC, the method is basically the method name, right? So we can even go more granular, because when we talk about HTTP, we have the verb, the HTTP verb, and then we have the path. But since the path can have a high cardinality, because it can be, the ID can be anything, we can restrict by get. But if we, for example, follow a REST API approach, then we know that there is a structure, and then we can extract the relationship as /users, for example, / the user ID. Then we can say like, okay, the resource I am trying to access is the user ID that is on the end of the URL. The type of the resource is users, and then I can build the object or the resource with those conditions. Basically, one of the good things about OpenFGA is that you can model these in different ways. For example, if we talk about an Istio environment, we will have more entities, not only user and SPIFFE identity. We will have namespaces, services, clusters, nodes, and then we can do access decision based on them. Let me share the terminal quickly. Yeah, so we have, you can see, I have a Docker a Docker Compose instance. We have an Envoy here. We have an OpenFGA service running here. We have an OpenFGA external authorization server, and we have a destination, right? And then we will do a curl. Just to show, this is going to be the access token that you, after the login, you will get. In this case, I use the test token from Auth0. So I do the export, and then I will do the curl. I will try to access the /headers endpoint, and I will get a headers. It's 200, okay? Because according to my model, I have access to that. But for example, if I do post, I will get a 4-3, right? Because I didn't add a tuple saying that I can access to post. Again, this is a very simple test because we are looking at the HTTP pair, but it could be the path, it could be a specific query, it could be a path prefix, for example, or based on a header or whatever I can extract from the request. What happened underneath was like, for example, if I look at the Docker logs of this container in the XOZ service, I had different access decisions requests. In this case, the service is in mode enabled, but I can have monitor mode or disable mode. Monitor mode is I check the access decision, but I don't block if it's blocked, right? And then I see checking permissions. This user that I pass in the yacht, I pass in the yacht, is asking for the relationship, is checking the access for the relationship access on the object of this SPIFFE identity. And then it resolves the access granted because it was the get, right? And then the second request was I am extracting values from the request. I am checking permissions here, again the same, but with the post, and I get the access denied. Again, all this happens because I extract these values from the request. Remember that I did. Let me quickly show this so I can. Sorry. Remember, I set up a set of extractors on the configuration of this here. Because this is important because I could have different extractors for different conditions. This is a user to service, let's say, access control. So I have one extractor that checks the user, checks the object in the SPIFFE identity, and checks the relationship. It could be a service to service. So in the user, I will have another type SPIFFE, and then the access control will be service to service, right? And we could have, this is a list, so you can have fallback also. Like, for example, when you are querying from outside, right? You are unauthenticated, so you don't have a payload job, for example, whenever you are first trying to access the login. Then you will have another instruction set just for that case when you're unauthenticated. Or if you're authenticated with a cookie, we will have a cookie extractor that will extract the identity from the cookie. The object will be the same, the SPIFFE identity, and the relationship can be this request method, it could be the path, it could be whatever. Okay. So yeah, what is coming then? Let me quickly show you. What is coming? Well, fine-grained access on user to resource in a REST API, user to endpoint service namespace, node, cluster, etc. on Kubernetes, service to service, service to namespace, service to node, service to cluster on Istio. This is what we are aiming for on this OpenFGA with Envoy integration. And yeah, I'm giving a talk about this on Monday, a longer talk, more well explained. So yeah, this is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose. I don't know if you have any questions around this, but if you all are interested in following along with Jose's progress, the code is available on OpenFGA/OpenFGA-Envoy on our GitHub repository or GitHub organization. So keep an eye on that for sure. Let me find my chat. Do we have any questions? Nope. Then let's continue with the demos. Next up is the OpenFGA Kubernetes operator by Søren. Are you here?
Yeah,
I think I've
I'm
seen
here.
you. Perfect. Then it's your time to shine.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm working, my name is Søren Schwartz. I'm working as a freelance consultant, and the current project I'm working on, we looked into a permission system, and then we chose OpenFGA. We also use Kubernetes and GitOps. So one of the things that we find difficult was to know that our authorization model was in sync with what you had in our GitHub repository. So a way to always know that what was the state of our authorization model in our cluster. So that's why we looked, and we are not using Go, so we couldn't use the default functionality in OpenFGA. So that's why we look into making an operator where you can make an authorization request, and then you have updated your authorization model to store and IDs on your deployments. So this is what I will show you now. So let me try. Oh, I will leave the meeting. I need to give some access. So two things.
Oh, we'll wait a few seconds for Søren to come back with the right permissions. Authorization is easy, right? There we go. I can see he's joining already. Welcome back.
Cool. So now you should see my screen.
All good.
Cool. So what we want to do is that we want to make our authorization model. So what we will do in this example, what we implement is that we have an operator which listens to authorization model request. The first thing we need to do is that we need to deploy the operator. So before this demo, I just made a namespace and I deployed OpenFGA. So I executed these commands. So if you want to deploy this operator, I fetch the repo, and then you can search for it. There's a version here. So the first thing is that I will install the operator into my environment. And it is starting up. And here we have So now my operator is running in my cluster. So what I want to do now is that I want to deploy an authorization model request. And what I want to do is that when I make this custom resource definition, I wanted to deploy, make a store in OpenFGA and make an authorization model. So what that looks like is like this. I only want to give it a name because all these strange IDs is, I just want to think of it as a name, which I can then use later in my deployments to reference to. So I make this invoice that we also make it semantic, and then the model down here. And this I can add to my GitHub repository. So when I, for example, apply this one, if I just look in my environment, right now there isn't any models. If I look like this. So what will happen when I deploy this request is that OpenFGA will, my operator will listen to it. It will create a custom resource definition, which is called a store, which reference an ID from OpenFGA, and then an authorization model, which also reference an ID in OpenFGA. So if we look at what will happen if I deploy this authorization model here, then if I now say that now there is an authorization model created with the name of document, and if I look at it, I now have some metadata, but I also have this ID. So that means that now an authorization model has been published to OpenFGA. And likewise, I can also get stores, and a store has been created for me. And it also contains an ID. So what I want to do now is that I would like to have a deployment, and the only thing I want to have these two IDs injected as environment variables. So what I will do is that I will have a deployment like this here, or you can see it here. And the only thing, let's start by this, I want to add is a label which references a name of the model store. I want to have environment injected. From where I want environment variables injected. So let's try and deploy this here and see what's happened. And I think the operator is scheduled. So right now it's probably looking for, so I'll just wait until it is updated. Yeah, cool. So now I can see that the operator got it. So what I can see now is that my environment variables is injected, added to my deployment. Even though I only added this label myself, saying that I want to reference the document, the store of documents. And then I get some annotation telling me that the authorization model version I'm using is 111. So this is just some semantic version, so the easiest to interpret for us when this deployment was updated and some timestamps. So now we want to update our authorization model. So let's say that now instead of before we had this versioning down here, but now I want our authorization model to evolve and look like this. So I patch it to 2, for example. Now when I let's then watch our pods. So what will happen now is that when I deploy this, since I haven't referenced any specific versioning on my deployment, what I want is I want to always be up to date with the latest authorization model used. So I want, without touching anything, I only want to update my authorization model, and then I want all my deployments to automatically just reference the new model. If I do this, you can see now my pod restarted, so my deployment changed. And if I look at it again, and you can see also if we look at our authorization model, here, so I applied this request, having this one, and now if I look at the authorization model, should not be. Yeah, so if I now look at my authorization model, which is the resource definition my operator is creating, I can see now there are two models listed here with two IDs. And if I look now at my deployment, it now references the new one. 7J is the one referenced down here. So without touching anything on my deployment, I can just always reference the latest model. There are some metadata changed up here, so now I can see I'm listening to 112. So I have this traceability in my system. Now, if I don't want to update always to the latest version, I want to fix it. Then you can add some annotation here, which tells me that I always want to listen to, for example, 111. So if I deploy this again, what I want to see is that my deployment will again change and then reference the old model, so that I'm in control of when I'm deploying, updating each my different deployment files. So I will apply this one here, and my operator will then find it. Yeah, right now we are using a reconciliation of 45 seconds. It works for us, but you can configure it. So now you see it restarted, so my operator found it. You can look at it again. So if we look at this old one, what I want now is that I want to reference this model up here, which I see it is. It is the 111. My annotation is changed, so now I have both of these, which I put myself, but those updated from my operator. I can also see that, yeah, I'm using 111. And I'm also confident that it's only you can see on the timestamp that is only my authorization model which updates and not my store IDs. So yeah, that's demo. The project itself is up here at GitHub. I also think there's some link to it. And if anybody else is using Kubernetes, and please, yeah, it could be really cool to get some issues or people telling us how they manage to have both their authorization models in sync with in a GitOps way. But this is at least is a start from us. So yeah, that's the deal.
So thank you very much, Soren. I think this is pretty cool, and it's a problem we heard customers have. So we will try to we will look into it a little more and see how we can collaborate on making it better with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, can I say something? Yeah, this is pretty cool. I myself have been fighting with persisting the model like within init containers, having to, for example, whenever you persist a model, then the model ID comes in a JSON, so then you have to pass to JQ. Yeah, it's really messy, so this is really cool. I just have a question. Whenever you reconcile the authorization model, like, is there, or have you tried any failure mode where the model cannot be synced? Because I saw, like, when you list, for example, the models, it only show you the name and the age, but not the status of the synchronization with the FGA server. Like, I persist a model, through Kubernetes API, and then can I track the status of the synchronization with the server, or is this synced, or how does this work?
Yeah, maybe let's see if I answer your question, if I understand it correct. I mean, the operator is handling all the communication to OpenFGA, and it will only update this resource authorization model resource if it succeed communicating with OpenFGA.
So it's synchronously.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just right now it's just implemented as, yeah, you can say one transaction going through the state of the cluster, getting all the custom resources that are getting the stores, and so from the request, syncing the stores and the authorization models so that those are in sync. And when those are in sync, the next step is comparing those with the state of the deployments. Right now, we only use deployments, but it could also be jobs. It hadn't been implemented right now. So it's like you can say item steps. First updating the resource definitions, and then update the deployments.
Okay.
Yeah, so if something fails, it will just try again and again.
Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you very much for this demo, Søren. And I'm going to quickly go to the next, because we still have one more demo from Rajet before we go to the community news and the results of the community survey. So please stick around for that, because that might be really interesting.
Hey folks. So a lot of people have been asking for fine-grained access control for FGA. So OpenFGA is now going to have this built in. This demo is a work in progress, and a shout out to Victoria for doing basically all of the work on this. Okay. Just to give you a heads up, in the initial release of this feature, we're gonna release it in experimental mode. We're not gonna make it production. We're gonna require you to do the kind of bootstrapping. We're not gonna do that for you, but we would like your feedback in terms of how is the experience? Is there specific relations or specific setups that you need? Do you want to customize your model or not? Things like this. The model we're working on is this one. I'll go over it very quickly. So basically, we're gonna require OIDC. So if you have authentication not set up, of course, FD on FD, the access control won't work. But also, if you have API tokens configured, that won't work. So you have to have OIDC. While in experimental mode, you have to set up the access control before enabling access control, and then I'll walk you through that. Again, walking through the model, we're gonna have a system, we're like a concept, a type called system. This allows you to add client IDs that you want to have access over everything. So in that case, you just give them admin access over the entire system. That'll give them access to all the stores. To create stores, they don't have to basically worry about access control after that. Additionally, if you want some clients to be able to create stores, because by default, no clients can, you can either give it to per application or per client ID, or you can say, okay, I want any client ID, of course, from my issuer to be able to create stores. That doesn't give them access to on other stores, just on that one store. So we have that system, we have that store is tied to the system, that just to allow us to be able to like grant the admin and can create once, and they have access to everything automatically. We have these set of permissions. Now, these are kind of, think of them as helpful permissions. You may not want to use them. These are like basically groupings, and these are definitely well, we want your feedback. Is this grouping, does this grouping make sense to you? But you don't need to stick to those. You can grant like fine-grained access to specific specific like relations or permissions. So you want a client to only be able to write models, go ahead. Like if you grant this, you'll be fine. So you can grant any combination you want, or you can just, like, to make it easier for you, use one of these. Of course, these might change. If you want to bring your own model with its own custom things, the ones we do require are these ones, the system, and everything to do with the module application and system. We'll talk about it later in a later debate. But additionally, we have a module type. The modules are only for writes, but there's been a lot of feedback around and like good feedback around the modular models we rolled out like a few months ago. But that was nice for, like, separating your models. But what if you want only some client IDs to write to their corresponding module? For example, if you're Atlassian, like you want the team that's responsible for Confluence to only be able to write to Confluence modules, versus the Jira team like cannot, for example, update the permissions for a Confluence page. In this demo, I'm not gonna go into modules, but maybe next month. So quickly, how do you set it up? Again, the friction you'll see is because this is experimental mode, so there's no bootstrapping. You're gonna have to do a lot of the bootstrapping yourself. First of all, of course, this is not production yet. This is on a custom branch, but we're having these. First of all, you need to enable experimental access control. And once it comes time to configure it, you'll have to configure these. First of all, to set up, you have to set up without access control, like just for the initial bootstrapping. Again, when this is production, probably will make it easier for you either through a CLI or through configuration, and how you would like us to make it easier for you. Feedback, that's always good. So first of all, let's create that root store. That root store is the one that's going to have all the permissions for the rest of the stores. So OpenFGA is going to be basically calling itself to ensure that people can do things across the stores. So we have one store that's designated as the root access control store. We're gonna create the model that you've seen here. And then we're gonna say, okay, for this, we have right now 2 client IDs, but we're gonna say, okay, for this client ID, I want to make it an admin on the system. Just for now, you won't have to do this later, but for now, we're gonna say the system is the system of that store. You won't have to do this manually when this is out. We're gonna create another store for Confluent, for Atlassian to work on. So we just created it, and we're gonna write. We're gonna say, okay, this is tied to the system. All right. If we right now access control is disabled. Now that we've created these, first of all, we need to get the authorization model that we wrote for the root store. So the one that we wrote here, that's the authorization model for the root store. We need it in order to configure FGA on FGA. The other thing is we need the root store ID that we just created. We need to say, okay, enable access control, and we should be good to go. We'll find out. All right, where were we? So, okay, now from the root client ID that, remember, has access to everything, we're gonna try to get the project store, and it's working fine. This is the project specific store. And with the project ID, now we're gonna try to get it. That was not supposed to work. Okay. Did I restart? Okay, we'll see. I'm gonna continue and hope this works. Let's try to call check. So we're not able to call check with the project store because it does not have access. What we're gonna do is we're gonna give it permission. So now with the root store ID, we're gonna configure access on the root store to grant the other client permission. So here is us. We're granting the second client access to only call check on that store. And now let's try calling check again. You remember the one that failed previously?
The error you're getting is that there's no model there. Maybe you didn't write a model for that store.
Two. Okay. Okay, so I'll pause here. This seems to be failing.
No problem, private. We will make it work for the next community demo. That's what happens when we try to demo things that that's still not. They're still building them. So thanks for the effort anyway to try to demo it today. And I know we will ask you to demo it today. So next time we'll work better.
We'll do a small offering to the demo gods next time, and then the demo will go flawlessly. So thank you very much for this. It really looks really cool, and we'll definitely demo this again in the future. But we're going slightly over time, and we still have a lot of things to talk about. So I'm going to quickly continue. What's happening now and next? I'm going to quickly skip over this, but if you're interested, our roadmap is on GitHub and you're always able to see an up-to-date version of our roadmap, what we're currently working on and what's coming up in the future. But I've hinted to this before. We've ran the OpenFGA community survey and we have some results. And to talk about these, we have Doni here as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Doni. I'm a product designer and also a fellow OpenFGA team member. So really excited to be sharing with you all the kind of preliminary or high-level results of the 2024 community survey. So we can move on to the next slide, please. So first of all, I would like to thank everyone again for your participation. We've got 28 responses for this year's survey. And then I say 70% of the participants actually reported they are recent adopters. So they learn about or discover and start using FGA less than 6 months. Next slides, please. So for these three cards, we're trying to really kind of paint you a picture of who participated in this survey, right? So first of all, I'd like to say that the participants for this survey actually reported they work for companies like, for instance, like startups to larger business, and we're talking about larger business with employees more than 1,000 employees. And then in terms of how long they've been using OpenFGA, we have 37% of the participants saying that they use it for about 3 to 6 months, while 33% saying that they have used it for less than 3 months. And over 88%, I would say reaching 90% of the participants saying that they've using the latest version of the OpenFGA. So kudos to everyone here. And then in terms of how people are deploying OpenFGA, we learned that the leading way of deploying OpenFGA is actually using Kubernetes via Helm chart. That is 73%. And then the next one in line is actually Docker. So for using OpenFGA in production environments, more than a half of the participants said that they're using OpenFGA in one or multiple production environments. And then in terms of deployment methods, other than deploying locally on local machines, AWS and GCP are the leading methods. And then some participants also reported that they are deploying with Kubernetes on-premise. And here in the last card here, I'm listing out the top 3 CI/CD tools reported by participant. So top 1 is Argo CD, and then followed by GitHub, and then GitLab. So moving on to the next one. And now that we learned a little bit about kind of like the deployment method, wanted to understand how people are using OpenFGA every day, right? So here are a list of the popular tools. And I would point out that CLI is perhaps the #1 kind of tool that people are using when they use OpenFGA. So we have 85% here. The rest of some other popular tools include Helm chart, and again, FGA Playground and the Go SDK, and then the VS Code extension. So moving on to the other part of like kind of scaling with OpenFGA, we've seen participants reported that they have tuples, like thousands of tuples in FGA to hundreds of thousands, and then to millions. So we're really excited to see that people are really kind of scaling with FGA and then seeing that FGA have that scalability. Participant also reported they have multiple teams working in OpenFGA. So, trying to move on. So in terms of what are the future improvements people are interested in seeing, these are the top ones. The first one being list objects performance and capabilities. And then we also have reduced check latency, logging and auditing, search with permissions, and data synchronization. So moving on to the next one. So again, we want to thank everyone for their amazing feedback. So here is a slide that I just pick out a few examples from a large set of feedback that we received. So again, we will review the feedback and then we'll prioritize accordingly. These are just a handful of things I want to point out in terms of like some of the answers to the magic wand question, like what would you add or change to OpenFGA, right? One of those, I think my favorite one, right? It's saying that I would make OpenFGA docs much more interactive. There could be an LLM integration that helps and evaluates the DSLs we give. So that seems pretty cool, right? If you have time, feel free to read through the rest. Given the time here, I'm not going through all of them, but again, just really, really appreciate all the great feedback and great comments people provided in the survey. We'll definitely take time to really kind of go through it and make sure that there'll be an action plan. Next slide, please. And I think that's a wrap here for me.
Thank you very much for those insights. And thank you again to everybody that helped out and filled in the community survey. They really give us good insights on how you use it and what you want out of OpenFGA. So thank you. We'll end this call with a little bit of community news. First of all, Kaya, one of our colleagues, will be presenting at SOSS SOS Fusion 24 in Atlanta, Georgia in October. If you're in the area and joining the conference, feel free to go talk to Kaya and attend our session on OpenFGA. We're also present at the Open Source Summit in Europe with Jose will do a session on fine-grained policies, RBAC with OpenFGA. That's on September the 16th, so very soon, next Monday, I believe. And KubeCon North America will have an OpenFGA lightning talk, and we'll also be part of the Policy Engine Showdown. So that's 2 sessions you can join if you're at KubeCon North America. And if you're at the conference, we'll also have a kiosk at the pavilion. So feel free to come up to the team and talk to us, give us feedback, ask us questions, tell us how we're doing. We really love to talk to you at KubeCon as well. So we're over time, but if there's any questions, now is the last time you can do this unless you want to wait a month because we're doing this call again next month, like every month. But if you don't have questions now, but have some questions in the meantime, in the next few days or weeks, We also have the CNCF Slack, where we have a separate OpenFGA Slack channel, and the team is always part of that channel and monitoring all the questions. So if you want to get in touch with us, the CNCF Slack is the best way to do so. I see one question or one raised hand. Ala, feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, currently we, as like also many people, we have problem with list object performance. And I saw that on the roadmap, there is a plan for client side caching on the SDK level. So is there any estimation when you're going to ship this? Because I believe it can help us much with performance optimization.
Yeah, so caching of the case is planned to be worked on by the end of the year, probably Q4. And on the list object performance, we are improving performance across the board. However, we know list objects is a very expensive endpoint or query to resolve. And there's other work stream where we're trying to address the scenario where we call search with permissions, which is how you solve those problems at scale of searching all the resources that a user has specific relationship with. I recommend you can, let's discuss this in the CNCF channel, where we can link you to some documents and where we are explaining more what we're thinking of doing there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I think we're at time. Thank you everybody for joining. This call will go on YouTube in the next few days. And I hope to see you all on Slack and in the next call next month. Thank you everybody and have a good day.